So we're going to start in chapter 7 today. So chapter 7 is on chemical reactions and chemical quantities. So now we're going to start learning how to write a reaction, and then how do we figure out how much I'm going to make from a reaction. So before we talk about that, let's talk about some chemical and physical properties and changes. So these are going to be kind of like definitions. So first we want to talk about what is a property of matter. So we want to talk about physical and chemical properties. Okay? So physical properties are, change my color. So these are characteristics of matter that can be changed without changing its composition. So this is something that, a characteristic that can be changed without changing its composition. So it's not changing what it is. And these are physical properties. This is kind of dark right here, but this says physical properties, this says chemical properties. You should have it on your printed out sheets. So these are things that are directly observable. So let's think of some examples of things that I can change that doesn't change what it is. So let's think about something, what can I do to water that would change something about it but doesn't change it from being water. So I could add some, it looks like food coloring, you drop it in and it adds like flavoring, so that water flavoring. So that would change the taste. It's still water, but now it has a different taste. And it would also, most of those are colored, it would also change the color. So if I add some of those little food color drop things in there, now I've got flavored, different colored water. Okay? This isn't the actual change of doing it, this is just the property. So properties are kind of like adjectives or characteristics. The melting point is an example, and so is the boiling point. So the temperature at which it would melt and the temperature at which it would boil, not the actual action. Chemical properties, these guys are characteristics. Characteristics that determine how the composition of matter changes as a result of contact with other matter or the influence of energy. So here we're going to talk about, okay, if I had this compound interacting with another compound, what would I expect to happen? Or if I had this compound and I interacted it with some heat or something, what would I expect to happen? So these are properties that kind of talk about the behavior. So these describe the behavior of matter. So let's think about some examples. So one example is if I were to take some compounds and put them near fire, they would catch on fire. And so that is flammability. Another thing is, depends on how it interacts with, so some things, if it interacts with air or with water, it can become corrosive. So corrosiveness would be an example. Another one is acidity. So these are going to describe how my compound is going to behave. All right, now let's look at changes. So these were properties. Now we're going to look at changes, also physical and chemical. So physical and chemical changes. So changes are going to be kind of more like verbs, what's actually happening. Physical changes are changes that alter the state or appearance of the matter without altering the composition. Okay? So it's going to alter the state or appearance of the matter without altering the composition. So when we talk about state, the state is solid, liquid, gas, etc. So if I say what the state is, if I say it's a gas, that's a physical property. But if I say something is boiling or melting or evaporating or condensing or any of those, then those are changes. So think about verbs. So if they're doing a phase change, going from one to the other, then that's a physical change. Okay? If I'm adding dye to something, then I'm actually physically doing something and I'm just changing the color of it. I'm changing the appearance. So when I'm adding the drops of that food coloring or water coloring to it, then I'm adding a dye to it and I'm coloring the water. The color itself would be a property, but the action would be a physical change. All right, let's talk about chemical changes. These are changes that alter the composition of the matter. So just a reminder here, the atoms that are present rearrange into new molecules. But all of the original atoms are still present. You don't just lose an element. If the element was there in the beginning, the element's going to be there in the end. So chemical changes are where it's going to go from one thing to something else. So this would be if I reacted water with maybe heat or something, and then it's going to break down, if I wanted to break down water. It would be reacting any kind of compound with something else, and then it changes. Okay? So on the next lecture, I'm going to walk you through some examples of some physical and chemical properties and physical and chemical changes to help you get the difference between the two of these.